What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? Story 1. As a teenager, I worked at a bowling alley. Within an hour, a new girl was fired on the spot for dropping a ball on the foot of a complaining patron. Story 2. 4 or so hours. When I was 18, I got a job at a grocery store, along with 3 others. We all started training together. On the first day, we were training in the evening, and one girl asked to go home. She said her head hurt. They said fine. She clocked out, went to grab a grocery cart, and started filling it with beer and liquor. The store manager walked over and asked her if she was having a party. She said yes. Didn't even try to come up with an excuse. Just, yeah, I am, so I needed to leave early on my first day. Basically, he fired her. Story 3. He didn't show up the first day, second day, or third day. I had to work a double shift for 3 days straight. Not fun. I answered the phone when he finally called in on the 4th day. He said, "I'm going to be honest with you, I've been in Orlando. My parents paid for a small vacation as a reward for getting the job. Would it be okay to start next week instead of this week?" Story 4. Guy got hired, went through training and all that jazz. First day on the floor, he disappeared for 3 hours and then came back high as like meth or something. A manager found him in the bathroom aisle, staring at himself in the mirror. Said manager looked at the cameras after firing him. The guy was there staring at himself for at least 30+ minutes. Story 5. Before their first day on orientation, I got hired for a manufacturing job through Manpower, a temp agency. Me and a friend of my wife were both supposed to start on Monday at the plant for a week-long orientation. She got into a fender bender on her way to orientation and called them to say that she'd be a bit late, that she just needed to wait on the police to give a statement. The manager told her not to bother ever coming in. Girl was torn up. She took pictures and the police report into the hiring manager, tried to explain things to the company HR managers, but no dice. She was fired before ever clocking in. Story 6. Worked in a grocery store for a while. New guy took a lobster out of the tank and removed the elastic bands on its claws, then proceeded to put it back in the tank. The thing all the other lobsters in the tank. Story 7. 3 hours into the first shift. Guy lost it serving an annoying customer in a grocery shop, throw a cabbage at her. The manager came and told him to go home cause he finished there. He wasn't surprised. I was standing next to him. It was an entertaining day. Story 8. I worked construction. We had 2 new hires that were friends starting the same day. Boss told one take a coffee order and come back. Took everyone's money and said he needed his friend to go with him cause it was a big order. They never came back. Story 9. A man was hired to do stock at a tea store that sold lots of delicate china. Manager walked into the back on his 3rd day and saw him just throwing boxes of teacups and teapots. Instantly fired. Story 10. I called a temp agency to get someone to help me count inventory. They sent a guy over with a cast on his arm. That was my first WTF, but I went with it because we were just counting parts. Then I came back from lunch, and this dude was in my office chair zoned out and drooling on himself with a can of air duster in his lap. I kicked him awake and escorted him out of my warehouse. Never used that temp agency again. Story 11. A 19-year-old kid got hired to work the seafood counter. See him twice and then never again. Asked a coworker what happened. He had closed seafood one night and was walking out of the store, and the 5 pounds of crab legs he'd stuffed down the back of his pants fell out in front of the closing manager. Story 12. New guy started on Monday and was gone by Friday. The guy hit some racking in the warehouse with the forklift. Boss saw him do it, and the guy decided to lie about it when asked if he knew what happened. Story 13. Coworker. Smoked every 40 minutes for 10 minutes. Then asked the boss if he could leave an hour early because he didn't take his lunch break. As my boss said, "Sure you can, but you don't need to come back." Story 14. This was just a summer job at a fast food place. We had a new girl start, and within 2 days it was apparent she was an idiot and everyone knew that. You could already see the manager questioning his decision. Then on her third day of work she said she couldn't come in because her mom was in a car accident and in the hospital. Turns out that's an easy thing to disprove in a relatively small town. Story 15. Corporate chain restaurant. New server, aged mid-30s. Third day he was working, we had to fire him mid-shift. Why? Dude went into the public restrooms, with other guests clearly in there using the urinal, and started doing lines of blow-off on the edge of the sink. Story 16. About 35 minutes. I hired a guy to work for me as quality inspector for merchandise headed to Walmart and Target. He bragged about everything he stole from his last job during training and how they paid him more than I did. Well, I'm not holding him back from all that money, so I had some big guys escort him off the property. Story 17. I was fired on my second day as a line cook at a Mitzel's restaurant in Washington State back in the 90s. Turns out I was hired just to threaten the job security of a long-time line cook with an attitude problem, to keep him in line. He got the message and apologized to the manager, and I was fired for breaking a yolk when flipping fried eggs. One time. I'd been a line cook for a few years by then, and thought I was doing pretty good. I was taken out the back door and terminated on day 2. Story 18. Guy had been working a few days at a barn. Decided to smoke right by bales of hay. Manager saw him and fired him right on the spot. At farms, you don't fuck around with fire. Story 19. First day of work, he walks in, says, "What the f***'s up, dumbass?" to the guy that parked next to his new Camaro he bought since he got hired. The guy was the CEO of the company I used to work for, on visit to our branch. Literally 10 minutes into his shift he was signing release papers. Story 20. Coworker quit his job, great pay, great benefits to work in a radio repair place. I mean, gotta do what you love, and he was also a big radio enthusiast. Got fired the first day on the job for stealing parts for his own radios at home. Took him over a year to get back with us. Surprised they rehired him. He then got fired for being a security risk about a year or so later. Story 21. Day 1 of training. Within the 6th hour of a 8-hour shift. Worked in an old crank handle service elevator at a private residential condominium. We told him just shut up and stare straight ahead. Don't speak unless spoken to. 'Cause old rich people are mean and don't care about you. Well, what's the new guy do? Starts a conversation right away and asks the resident, "How much money do you make?" Story 22. The IT crew at a large government office worked on a ticket system, meaning that the government workers submitted their problem online and one of the IT guys would pick it up on their end. The new guy just started his first day, logged into a computer at an empty office, and submitted a reinstall entire OS request so he could spend all day there. The manager decided to check in on him before lunch to see how he was doing, and he was completely asleep. Fired before they even finished his hiring paperwork. Story 23. I used to do a lot of field work on site investigation programs. Basically, we'd hang out on a drill rig while the drillers took rock cores. We'd log the cores, take photos, do some downhole tests, etc. New engineer gets sent to site and gets assigned the night shift. Some people love night shift, but most people don't, hence sticking the junior with night shift. After 5 nights he calls the office and says he wants to come home because he's freezing and he hates it, and he can't do it. Not clear to me if he quit or got fired, but it became plain pretty quickly that this job wasn't for him. I got pulled onto that program, and I asked the drillers what the guy's deal was. They had a propane heater in the back of their van, and despite repeated invitations to sit in the back of the van, Buddy just sat in his truck all night and shivered. In the middle of February.